seasonally, or it's going to become a permanent fixture in your tasting room because people absolutely love it. So I think that's where most of the experimentation is going to end up happening, because I'll have the starting product and I'll already, I'll be able to get 3 or 4 products out of the same ferment. And then I've got a small excess left over, and I can dump them in, I could dump them in 6-gallon carboys if I wanted to as well. But that seems, after all these years, that seems like a small batch and a lot of work to go through for not a whole lot of return. I'd rather step up to something like 20, because I can put it in 4 or 5-gallon corny kegs and at least have 4 kegs to run through, the taps in the tasting room. So, and as far as what that experimentation is going to entail, initially it's probably going to be working with different fruits, different amounts. Might do some sour fermentation. So I might have some containers and some equipment to do, lacto. Not confident I'm going to work with Brett just yet, because I've got some other contamination concerns. You have to worry about lacto. I can, for the most part, you can contain that. That at higher levels of alcohol will often pretty much die anyway. Yeah. So it's a little bit safer.
Yeah, but you get into Brett though. Yeah, that's it. You almost have to have that in a different room with with a sealed zone between it and everything else.
Yeah, most certainly.
Yeah.
And then certainly barrels.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got a place in mind? And you don't have to tell us if it's a big secret, but I'm curious.
I have a number of potential suppliers that I could get stuff from, whether they be once used, freshly dumped spirit barrels. New barrels. Got a number of places that I can get new.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you had if you were thinking rum barrels or port barrels, or if you had a kind of barrel that you had a yen for.
I'm a bourbon and rye guy.
So okay.
Those would be likely what what I would start with, just because I like the aromas and flavors. And,
can you see a really nice semi-sweet cherry mel in a bourbon barrel? That would be so good. Oh my God, that would be so excellent.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree that actually, I'd actually take that a next step and try to turn that into a Manhattan cocktail. If you think about getting the bourbon, you've got your maraschino cherry in there, and you've got your real maraschino cherry. You've got real cherries and real maraschino liqueur, so you've got a lot of robust cherry flavor in that. You've got a lot of bourbon and wood. Might be stupid enough to throw some sprigs of rosemary in there or something, and basically you've got a cocktail coming out of the barrel.
Yeah. I'm on the fence about rosemary in meads. I've had some good ones, but my efforts have always ended in something that was really good to cook with. But yeah, it's an interesting herb to work with. So I don't know, with cherry, I think I'd want to go more with, I don't know, maybe a cinnamon or malab, something like that.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm writing myself a note right now, so I'm going to make a small batch of what I described, and I'll bring it to the Mazur Cup, and you're going to love it.
Okay, cool. I'd like to try that. That would be cool. Yeah, I've had some really awesome rosemary, meads with rosemary in them, and that it's just that my personal experiences with working with it have been less than successful.
Yeah. It's definitely a very pungent herb, and I grow a couple kinds of rosemary in my garden at home, and even when we try
I've got 2 rosemary bushes. Damn things, they're like trees.
Yeah, you can't kill them.
No, you can't. And they're awesome. Every time I walk by them, you just rub your hands along them, so then your hands smell like rosemary for hours. It's like the best ever.
Yeah, and it's not one that I use a ton of. I mean, I'll the few times I go crazy with the herbs and the metheglins, which is really not all that often, it's for whatever reason, I think cinnamon and vanilla is sort of my comfort zone when it comes to metheglins. Chili peppers too, depending on how you define that, whether you define it as a fruit or a spice as well.
Yeah, I think it's other. It's not really either.
Yeah, I played around with thyme quite a bit. Fresh thyme can be really nice.
Yeah.
It's, that with some pink peppercorns and some anise. It actually, I made a soda with it a few years back, and I tried to make a mead with it, and it was early when I was still shaking out some process issues, and I ended up getting bottle re-fermentation that pretty much killed the 3 or 4 bottles of it that I ended up with. But it's something that I have on my experimentation list to do over the winter is make that mead again with the thyme, the pink peppercorns, and the anise, and try to get that right. And in this case, try to kind of make a mead version of that soda. So it'll be sweet, it'll have some sparkle to it, and it'll have this nice sort of light, herbal, licoricey kind of flavor to it. And so I've used thyme a couple different times, if you will.
I'm not a fan of the anise. But I'm not a licorice fan, so that's just a personal taste thing.
Yeah, and that's another one people definitely, it's a love or hate. How about star thistle? Have you had star thistle honey and mead before?
There's a place near my great-grandfather's old farm he has star thistle. I got 5 gallons of it years ago. I haven't been back there in a while, but it was amazing. I love that honey. It's a nice honey, and it's so versatile.
And the 2 times I've gotten that honey from, I can't remember where I got it, mail ordered from. It's been
probably Dutch Gold. They carry it.
Yeah, very anise heavy to me, which is
really
weird because it's and in the description of it in the BJCP guide, I think that's where there's a listing for it. It does indicate that it can have a bit of a trend there, but it's weird because I didn't necessarily expect it. And then I got some wildflower honey from Wisconsin this year, and swear to God, you open that bucket and it's definitely licoricey. It's obviously there was some source of a plant that basically after the bees got done with it, it smells like anise a bit. And it's so again, and not one that I would use a ton of, but it's very complementary to some other things. So with a little bit behind it. And I think this is where the rosemary, what I was, kind of where I was going with this, with the cherry in the wood, I would want to have just a little bit in it because I wouldn't want it to be piney and resiny. Once it got to the piney resiny phase, like where you could really pick it out, I doubt it. I doubt it would be pleasant. It would probably be like, this is weird. It tastes. Why is there roast chicken in my?
Why is there? Yeah, this would be a little bit too Willy Wonka.
Absolutely.
Now, as long as we're on the subject of interesting things to throw in your mead, one of the things that I've run across a couple of times and only like twice in professional meads is spruce tips. There was a meadery in Western Virginia that unfortunately is no longer open, but he had a spruce tip methglin that was divine, and it was a semi-sweet, so it backed up that spruce tip flavor. And then there was another one in Colorado that did an off-dry spruce tip that was really good. And unfortunately, neither of them are open anymore, not because of the quality of their mead, but just, funding, management, yada, yada. They didn't pull through for whatever reason. But I thought it was I love the smell of, that spruce tip smell. It's just a really fresh, clean, crisp smell. And the times I've had it in the meads were very pleasant experiences. Have you ever played with those?
I have. I actually put it in a couple of beers a few years back, and I kind of OD'd on it. I went a little heavy on it. And
so it's kind of like a too much IPA thing.
Yeah. And the beer was pretty stinky of spruce tips, and of course I drank it because it was, one of my projects, and I'm gonna drink this, goddammit. And it was, I like, okay, enough with the spruce tips. There was a point at which I felt like I could smell it, like emanating off of myself.
That much of it, huh? So this is kind of like that thing you drank too much of in college and then barfed for 3 days straight, and so now I can't drink it anymore. That thing?
Vodka and orange juice.
Tequila for me.
I feel like maybe I was Clark in Christmas Vacation after I got all the tree stuff all over me. Yeah, it's kind of like, but I felt like it was following me. Like,
oh God! So no spruce tips for you then, is what you're saying?
I would do it again. I didn't end up, even when I first made it, I didn't really end up digging it as much as I had thought. it's again, I think the piney resiness where I just went too far with it. I didn't really enjoy it, and I think sometimes where I pick up that really intensely piney, resiny aroma and flavor in IPAs, sometimes I can't dig that either because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't feel like it fits as much as that with maybe a little bit more fruit, citrus or something in it. But if it's just straight pine resin, I'm like,
no, you need to back it up with something. That's why it worked well in a mead, because there was that honey backing it up. I
could see it working, absolutely.
It's funny you should mention it, because I was thinking of doing my first fruit mead, and using a local fruit down here, mango, and that was mango and pine. Seem to be one of those weird combinations that share a lot of
that makes perfect sense to me, because mangoes taste piney to me.
They do, yeah. That would actually, I'd love to see how that turns out, Manny. That's really interesting.
That's going to be the first fruit, mango and pine. I got to get the pine extract because I don't have any pine in Florida.
Well, drive up to the swamp and
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to head too far north to find pine trees.
Yeah, it's Florida. There's pine trees.
East Coast.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes, slash pines.
Yeah, that's true. Well, okay. Here's as long as we're on the subject of interesting and strange meat ingredients. Here's another one the same guy in Western Virginia used that have not seen since, sadly, because this was oh my God, stellar, like this is what the fairies bring you kind of mead. It was a honeysuckle mead, and not made just from honeysuckle honey, which of course the bees can get that, but using honeysuckle flowers. So getting that nectar from the honeysuckle flowers.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I can't
it was
say
rarefied. I mean, this stuff was expensive and there was not much of it.
Yeah, and I can't say that I can necessarily picture, because I can think of honeysuckle, like, gentle aromas of it in some white wines, and sort of hints of that in different types of meads where you don't have any other ingredients. But I'm wondering what that would smell and taste like when it was a bit more concentrated, because you're sort of focusing on that. And I don't have a good frame of reference for it, but it does definitely sound interesting.
It was delectable. It was different, It wasn't like regular meads. It was definitely like because you had both the honeysuckle honey, as well as the actual floral source itself. So it's kind of a double whammy. So it was an intense experience, but it was well put together. And I wish this was the kind of mead that didn't keep. Honeysuckles degrade very quickly. I know, I tried. Those, you've got like 14 minutes before those flowers like wilt and start to turn brown.
Yeah.
Once you pick them, they better go right. You better have your bucket with you. So they're crazy. But it's interesting, because I see some of the oddest things going into mead these days, and you think, oh yeah, I don't know, and then they come out, and some of them are really amazing. Some of them not so much, but some of them are really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and it was funny because we got to thinking about this, and I have a metheglin going. It's a recipe I got from John Talkington, and it's his medieval metheglin. So it's got I think it had like 12 ingredients in it, which is probably the most number of ingredients I've technically put in a mead.
I'll have to give you the first one I ever did. It's got like 26 spices in it. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Colonel
it was
Sanders recipe.
The Colonel Sanders mead. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and it's a bit more than I typically do, but it got me thinking, kind of categorizing the different types of meads out there right now. And, you have ones that have lots of ingredients, and when layered correctly and they have their own contributions, they can be quite pleasant. Opposing that, you have things like traditionals or, single fruit or limited fruit blends where everything jumps out. Everything is there, but it's not in your face. And then of course you have these bigger, bolder meads, many of which have both co-fermentation up front of tons of fruits and lots of secondary manipulation with additional fruits and spices, and they're huge, they're in your face, you know, they everything's big and bold. And you know, you think about it, there's a place for all of that stuff.